What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're into the fight talk. Former middleweight champ Robert Whittaker, 20-5 versus Darren Till, 18-2. What we've basically got here is a pay-per-view main event on a regular ESPN fight card. I know that there is no title on the line, and that's why this is not a pay-per-view main event. But for something like this to just be some regular thing on TV Saturday evening, this is one hell of a treat for fight fans. Unbelievably interesting fight, or at least I think it is. There's a lot at stake here. It'll probably determine who will be fighting for the title after Adesanya defends his title against Paulo Costa. That was just scheduled for September. But the fact that this is likely a title eliminator, to me, almost feels secondary to just looking at this showdown on paper. This is Whittaker Till. Now, Robert Whittaker won the Ultimate Fighters reality show back in 2012. He had some decent success at welterweight 170, got stopped by karate/MMA genius Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in 2014, moved up to middleweight 185, and went on an incrementally impressive run where each opponent's a little better than the last. But you just look at the names, even early on in the run. Uriah Hall, Brad Tavares before that. This all led up to a late TKO win over Derek Brunson, which then launched him into a collision with fearsome top contender Ronaldo Jacare Souza, a fight which Whittaker entered a 2-1 underdog. And in the second round, Whittaker uses some punches and feints to set up a head kick which lands, dropping Souza. Whittaker gets the finish, shocks the division. And at this time, there's a lot of championship weirdness going on at 185 middleweight, because Weidman just lost his title to Luke Rockhold, then Rockhold immediately loses his title to Michael Bisping. Bisping is dealing with an injury and then has a decision win over a 45-year-old Dan Henderson, then gets stopped by GSP in GSP's first and probably final fight in that division. GSP vacates the middleweight 185 title. So during that same stretch, Robert Whittaker then fights Yoel Romero, arguably the second greatest middleweight I've ever seen, for the interim title. Whittaker wins that by decision in a close, tough 5-round fight. Whittaker's interim title is later promoted to actual title. He's out for a year and he has to fight Romero again in his return because Romero just knocked Luke Rockhold out cold. So Whittaker and Romero rematch, resulting in an even more brutal 5-round dogfight than the first. Look, people often overuse the term dogfight to describe any action-packed fight, but when you combine the stakes in a fight like this with the fact that you are fighting Yoel Romero, that's a whole nother ball of wax. In his relatively short career in the UFC, he had a late start being a Cuban Olympian and having to essentially defect from the nation. He ended up living in Germany for a few years, then coming to the States. Romero has stopped a prime Chris Weidman, destroyed Lyoto Machida, stopped Derek Brunson, knocked Luke Rockhold out cold, as I mentioned, and won via decision against Jacare Souza. Yoel Romero is like a human missile. Yoel Romero is basically a former best wrestler in the world. He is an Olympic medalist who now chooses to rarely ever wrestle in the UFC and instead would rather knock you into oblivion with an explosive punch, knee, kick that he can deliver with the speed of a featherweight. I'm talking Roy Jones Jr. type of athlete here. And Robert Whittaker's gotta fight him? 2 consecutive 5-rounders? I don't think there's a worse back-to-back fight combination that a fighter could ask for than Romero and then Romero again. And Whittaker edges that first one. Then they look like they nearly kill each other in the second one. And Whittaker gets the decision again in a total pick'em fight. I still believe that's one of the 5 most brutal fights I've ever seen, where you leave the fight wondering what either of these guys will have left career-wise. And they would both end up being sidelined for over a year following that showdown. So it's through that context, through that lens, that I can't help but view this fight through. Even when Whittaker tried to make his return 8 months after that second fight with Romero, he ended up being hospitalized, having to undergo emergency surgery. due to an abdominal hernia of the intestine and a twisted collapsed bowel. And I'm not qualified to tell you whether that is combat sports or weight cut related or not. But both of those fights versus Yoel Romero won fight of the night on their respective cards. Hey, young fighters out there, one key to career longevity: please don't have multiple fights of the year with Yoel Romero. When Whittaker finally does return to the cage to defend his title 16 months later, Israel Adesanya drops him late in the first and finishes him in the second. And I've always thought that that was an impossible championship reign to navigate. But since Whittaker was champ, his next fight had to be a defense, and it had to be against the next up, best up. It's not like boxing where you could take a tune-up fight between the two elite high-level fights in terms of your opponents. I never thought Whittaker was fully recovered, and even if he was, he's not back to 100% fight rhythm, and Adesanya is just not the guy to be 70-80% against. And now, after having gone through all this, plus pulling out of this latest fight with Jared Cannonier for personal reasons, which he later attributed to personal burnout, which who the hell could blame him? After all of this, I think that it's just as dangerous to take on a Darren Till fight now as it was to defend the title versus Adesanya before that. If I'm Team Whittaker, I'd much rather have seen a Whittaker versus Derek Brunson 2 than to see Whittaker fight someone whose first middleweight fight in 6 years, just a few months ago, was a win over Kelvin Gastelum. So Darren Till just beat the guy that Whittaker was gonna fight before pulling out with the intestinal problem. And he beat him with intelligent boxing, kickboxing, distance management, two-handed dexterity, good athleticism, a lot of length. Darren Till just gives people big problems. People often remember what he did to Cowboy Cerrone, systematically dominating, then stopping him all within one round. Most people don't really remember him fighting that even fight with Wonderboy Thompson, where Till was awarded the decision win. And yes, that's the same Wonderboy Thompson who stopped Robert Whittaker years before that. Darren Till is also the guy that the UFC would just love to make one of the predominant faces of the sport and of the organization. They basically look at him, his looks, him being from the UK, and basically having the entire UK on his back and being able to kind of cross market there. He came into the UFC with a ton of hype, and thus far, he's delivered on some of it. After that decision win over Wonderboy Thompson, he challenged Tyron Woodley for the title, got stopped, then got knocked out cold in his very next fight versus Jorge Masvidal in a pretty even fight up until the point of the knockout. In fact, Till dropped Masvidal with a clean punch in that first round. So Till is now climbing back, and with that win over Kelvin Gastelum on that UFC 244 BMF title undercard, that was a huge win for Till, and it was huge for his chances at really thriving in the UFC. So a win here over Whittaker, the former champ, would just launch him. And Darren Till certainly got the tools to do it. In fact, I think that either guy can stop the other through the stand-up by landing the right shots. Both guys have the delivery methods and the power. It'll be very interesting to watch their feet and see who starts taking over during some of the slower, less active moments of the fight. Who's landing their jab more frequently? Who's landing the significant leg kicks? Whittaker likes to throw feints before jumping into the pocket and throwing actual combinations. And while his defense is solid, Till is a very gifted counterpuncher. He should also have the reach advantage here. So are Whittaker's feet better than Darren Till's? I think it's close, man. I think it's real close. I do think that Whittaker is slightly more likely to score a one-punch style knockout, or a punch that's like the beginning of the end for the opponent, or a kick for that matter. But because of the issues that Whittaker's been facing, the latest of which being that vicious TKO loss to Izzy, and because Till should be riding into this one on a wave of confidence, I'm going Darren Till here, but probably by decision. I think that because of his use of spacing, he'll control more of those slow moments and can edge out the rounds that feature less devastation to either fighter. Not to say that this thing will entirely be a chess match, though I'm sure that Whittaker would be wise to welcome that at this stage. But Whittaker needs a win here, and I think that to win versus Till, you've got to find a way to deliver your power strikes and finish the guy. I just don't see guys having a ton of luck winning rounds versus Till. And not because of judging, but because he's a really good boxer, kickboxer, and an even greater Muay Thai artist. His Muay Thai is outstanding. Read up on his background. He just knows when to fight with his shoulders squared versus when to turn his body into a two-dimensional blade. And again, Whittaker's going to have to step on the gas if he wants to win here, in my opinion. And shoot, Whittaker stopped Jacare Souza, and I think that Souza at 185 or anywhere is more durable than Darren Till, who I've now seen get KO'd or TKO'd twice. Well, he got KO'd versus Masvidal. He got submitted by Woodley, but it was a punch that dropped him and put him in dire straits in that fight. So I think Till might be just chinny enough to where Whittaker might be able to take advantage of that. So Whittaker certainly got a shot at a KO, TKO versus Till. I just think that there's a higher likelihood that Till wins a close, competitive decision, which I still don't think would be a total loss for Whittaker career-wise. Both of these guys are in their 20s still, but that road to the title becomes a lot longer when you start losing to non-champions. So I've got Till via decision, although I'm not even discounting Till's power or ability to finish. I just don't think he's as offensively dangerous at 185 as Adesanya, at least not now. And Whittaker is a savage. He knows how to survive. He's gone 10 damn rounds with Yoel Romero, which I don't think Darren Till would have been able to do. I mean, they might fight in the future, but Romero, I can't overstate how dangerous this man is. Just look at his fight against Luke Rockhold. Romero only needs to be right once, basically. But all of this early career wear and tear on Whittaker in those battles, the health issues and injuries that I hadn't even mentioned, plus the mental aspect of suffering such a devastating loss, will keep Whittaker from operating at 100% here. And I want to be clear, if Whittaker were 100%, if we could roll back the clock 24 months, I would pick Whittaker. I think he's tremendous, and he's one of the most improved fighters I've seen over the past decade. I just can't imagine how he could be at 100%. Maybe this most recent time off after the Izzy fight has helped. COVID has probably complicated true recovery even further though, in terms of training and preparation, but I'm taking Darren Till via decision, guys. As I said at the top, this is an unbelievably interesting fight, so let me know your thoughts, who you got, and why. And please, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're into the fight talk. I'm Woog, thanks for tuning in.